Hello, I'm clarinetist James Tobin in Charlottesville, Virginia, and today I'm going to talk about some ways that you can speed up or work on developing the speed of the passages that you were learning for this Saturday at the All-State auditions. And the tools that I'm going to show you first must start with the assumption that you've learned the passage already, and so we'll discuss that in a second. But they are applicable to any instrument, not just the clarinet. And I'm going to specifically target and discuss the fourth measure of the clarinet soprano etude because it's just the most devilish thing in the piece. So, at the outset, I have to be able to play it and understand what's there. And hopefully after 2 weeks, you do know what's here and you can play it at a tempo that you're comfortable. Specifically, the fifth note of this measure is printed as an A, and as much as my ear does not like that, I'm going to play it as an A every single time. Okay, folks? So you heard at that tempo, which is really thinking of an eighth note, way under the final tempo, that I can play the passage. I know where I'm going, my fingers are confident, everything is fine. So one of the things, there are many pathways forward, basically. And one of the things you can do is you can specifically choose to play a shorter amount of notes. And a shorter amount of notes, you will be able to increase the speed and the accuracy. And you will be training your body to go ever increasingly closer to the final tempo that you're looking at. So I think eighth note wise, I was just at about 114 beats per minute. And now I'm going to bump it up to like 130. And if I'm only asking myself to play 4 notes, this is not going to be so bad. In this particular tool, I just played notes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and now I'm going to play 2, 3, 4, 5, then 3, 4, 5, 6. So now, I mean, at this speed, it's really not a big deal because, again, I'm not asking myself to play all 13 notes in a row yet. So I might even speed it up further. This is 150. And you could advance the tempo even more quickly. Moving towards, if the quarter note is 84, then of course the the eighth note is going to be 168, right? In fact, I'm almost there, so why not do it? And further on down the passage. Another tool that you can use is a very similar tool, but kind of allows us to unify the passage a little bit more quickly. This little lick here is 13 sextuplets, so 4 groups of 3, and you could simply play it by those segments. Now I'm going to take the tempo back down a moment. So this is going to be playing notes 1, 2, 3, 4, and I like to include the first note of each successive group so that there's a little bridge from the first group into the second and from the second to the third. So I'm going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, 9, 10 until I get to the end. One thing that I'm always asking my students to do, and I'm always paying a lot of attention to, is not just whether I can play something correctly, but whether it is easy or not. And one of the 4 of those groups is not easy for me. I'll play it again and see if you can figure out which one it is. But we'll use a last tool on that to, basically blast it into shape. One more time to see if you can figure out which group I least like. From there, you could, again, increase the tempo, because you're not asking yourself yet to play all of the notes in the group. This is 155. want another bit of a challenge, you could take the groupings you've chosen and simply move them a little bit. So kind of like we did with the slide, except for doing it with each of the groups. So instead of playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'm going to play 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so forth. And of course that leaves out some notes at the beginning, some notes at the end. I'm not really too worried about that. Once you've done enough explorations of a passage, you're going to cover everything. So as you are moving forward then, maybe you get near the final tempo with your 4-note groups. But you're still not all the way to being able to play all 13 notes in a row. You can then reorganize it. Instead of doing 4-note groups, you could do 7-note groups. How you stitch the little groups together is really up to you, and it's actually a lot of fun to find different ways to do it. The more that you successfully explore a passage, the more thoroughly you're going to understand it, and the easier it is going to be for you to play it. So the last tool that I use, which for me often is one of the first ones I use, is rhythmic variation. And with rhythmic variation, we are literally going to ignore the rhythm that's on the page, and we're going to substitute some other rhythms instead. So the very first rhythm that I'm going to play is really a dotted A16th. And I'm going to use it on the section that I like the least, which is basically the third sextuplet in the group. The A flat to the A natural to the E flat to the A flat. For whatever reason, it just doesn't really fit underneath my fingers very well, so therefore it's going to need the most effort, the most work, right? So here is rhythmic variation with a 6-note group that goes from the A flat to, nope, I'm going to change that already. In measure 4, we're going to go from the 3rd note, which is an E flat, to the last E flat of the measure. 7 notes. So I'm really trying to make sure that I'm delivering a real accurate dotted A16th. Da, ba, da, ba, da, ba, da. And anywhere I can't is obviously going to be a problem when I try to play the passage up to speed. Then we need to invert that. So instead of the dotted eighth note being first followed by a 16th note, we got to do the 16th note first followed by a dotted eighth. The reason why rhythmic variation is advantageous and a very successful practice tool is because your mind is allowed to group the notes in different patterns. So when you're playing da, ba, da, it's really patterns of 2 from the 16th note to the next dotted eighth note. And when your mind is on the dotted eighth note, it has a moment to relax and anticipate the next move. You can always choose to lengthen the long note. Generally speaking, your chances of success increase when you lengthen the long note if you have the patience to really sustain the long note. After having done that, that's basically what I think of as the first level of rhythm games. Dotted 16th, 16th dotted eighth. But if I really want to fix something so that I never have to look at it again, I'm going to go further. So in the dotted eighth 16th rhythm, we're essentially pairing 2 notes. Ba, ba-da, ba-da. And what I now am going to do is I'm going to do an eighth and 2 16ths. So we go bum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. So 3 notes together in a group. And then of course we need to invert that. So 2 16ths followed by an eighth. Da-ba-da, da-ba-da, dum. Now you might have noticed that I'm completely ignoring the articulation. Yeah, I am, completely. This is for organizing the fingers. This is not a tool, these are not tools for organizing the tongue with the fingers. That's a separate thing for you to work on. But generally speaking, if your fingers are moving smoothly and easily, your tongue is going to have a much easier time working with your fingers. Usually, when we have an articulation problem, one of the first things that I have my students look at is, are their fingers really moving smoothly? And so we slow the passage and discover where the flaws are. So now, having shown you several different ways to look at this, let's hear what 84 beats a minute sounds like. Personally, I can never play a passage quickly unless I can hear it quickly in my head, every single note of it. Not very good. Better, but if I wanted to throw this in the audition on Saturday, I'm going to give it more time and more effort, and I'm going to work it in many different ways. And all of the things I'm showing you do not supersede or put aside putting the metronome on. You still need to spend some of your time simply working it at a tempo that you can succeed with and repeating it so that you don't have to think about where you're going while you're playing. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you all are well on your way to having a really great audition on Saturday. It's a devilish piece of music. Keep at it. Oftentimes, if you've been practicing really effectively, the greatest growth is going to be in the last couple days. So I hope you all have a wonderful audition on Saturday. If you have questions, jamestobin.clarinet@gmail.com. Thank you.